Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Unraveler Show with my really great friend, Rick Welch. Rick, how you doing tonight? Or afternoon, I guess. Oh, am I off? What happened? Hang on. Huh.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I guess nobody could hear any of that. Welcome back to the Unraveler Show, everybody. Sorry for the mute project there. Also, sorry for being late. I was working on something just at the last minute. I don't even know if it will pay off. We're going to try here in a few minutes. If it doesn't, then sorry. Anyway, but yes, it's so great to be here with my good friend, Rick Welch. Rick, how you doing today, man?
Good to see you, bro. Saya.
Bro, Saya. Good to see you as well, Brosus.
Pulled that bro right from the water. Drew him right out.
Yeah, we're gonna bro our way through this whole show, I think. But anyway, it's great to have you, dude. I just love talking to you. This is so much fun. Today is going to be utterly fascinating. I genuinely can't wait for this show. I think we're gonna bring something genuinely different to the table here because you are you're an honest guy, so much so that you're willing to go down a path that like almost puts you in a place where there is no escape. And then you turn around and you're like, but I still got a way out. This is going to be interesting. So the show's going to definitely cause a little cognitive disequilibrium for people. Once we go through the 7 questions that you and I went through, and then I, as well as everybody else, is excited about hearing your answers or your final answer, your final response, so to speak, your God in the Matrix answer, the conclusion, all that. So that's this series is called God in the Matrix, and that's what we're going to be discussing. Why it is you stay in the faith, even though you see so many positive elements from my book that helped you even and help others, but almost take you there, but not quite. And you still stop and you say, nope, there's still a reason that I believe in God. And we're going to discover what that is. And I'm very excited about that. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to go through these 7 questions. We're going to hear your God in the Matrix, what that means. And then once we do that, depending on how that goes and how I understand it, we'll talk about some of the positive elements you see in my book. And I think that might actually help us kind of get down to what it is that is not connecting between the atheist and the theist, theoretically, if your view is right. Sound good?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you make a lot of really good, compelling arguments in your book. I mean, anybody that reads it will have to agree. They have to agree, period. If they don't, they're just being, in my opinion, idiotic. They're good arguments.
Well, I appreciate that. I do. So we'll see how that goes then as we move forward. We'll talk about that a little bit. And like you and I both have said, it's great for people to read this, if for no other reason, just to weed out the things in their life that are still holding them prisoner, so to speak, in whatever area that is, because it will definitely take you somewhere.
What I would say to Christians is, if you're going to read Alan's book, that be mindful of the things that you're in. Think about what you're in. Think about the high control that you could be in. Think about things that are that thing down deep inside your gut that you know is not right with your church or whatever it may be with those people. He will drive it right out of you. He'll drive it right out of you. Now, what I'm going to talk about today is something that we'll get into it, and to me it's incredibly basic. There's nothing. It's not convoluted or complex at all. But when you get into Alan's book, it's not convoluted, but it is complex. There's a lot to it. And that's what brainwashing is. It's very complex.
Right on. Well, I appreciate that commentary. And that's the actual fact. Like, whether it takes you all the way to atheism or only takes you out of the high control system that you're in and still remain a Christian, both are equally important. I think that's a great step for anybody to take, is to just realize where you are and where you could be freer and better.
Yeah. I mean, especially if you're in a dangerous cult. I mean, you methodically suck them right out of it if they'll just read it.
Yeah. Right. Well, and thanks to you, because of your continuous criticism of the title and how much you hate the title, How to Kill God the Easy Way, which is the book we're talking about, by the way. I am working on a revision, a much stronger revision, through all the feedback I've received over the last year. But especially the title. The title is going to be different, something that you would feel more comfortable handing to a friend or a family member and say, hey, read this. You need to read this. It's important. regardless of whether you end up still a Christian or an atheist or wherever in between after reading the book, you want to be able to feel comfortable saying, hey, read this. And that's why I'm changing the title. And I appreciate, Rick, you continuously getting in my face about that and not giving up on that, and showing me the value of my book and helping me to see what this change of title could actually do. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Sure, man.
So what I want to start with, Rick and I, oh my goodness, I don't know. I don't know. It's been a year, maybe 6 months. I don't know. Somewhere in the last 6 months, I guess. We had this interaction online, right? I can't remember. I guess it was around it had to have been pretty close to a year ago, because it was still around the time where I was still plugging my book with these Facebook things that I was just trying to create, tension and intentionally, because I was trying to draw a crowd, obviously. And that's what you do, is just promotion purposes. But there was one that struck you, and I think it was on the rape and slavery concepts. And we went in this discussion, and we were going back and forth, but because we had struck a friendship, we were able to say, hey, all right, let's do this. Let's just be honest with each other. Let's just do real simple. Let's start with just questions, and you say yes or no. And then you would have the opportunity to return the favor, or vice versa. I would be able to return the favor to you, where you would ask me the questions and I would just say yes or no. We never got to that step, but we did do my questions. And perhaps your 7 questions will take place on the show. Or
that wasn't your fault, by the way. You've offered a couple times. We just haven't had that exchange yet. That's all.
Sure. No, exactly. And that's totally fine. There's plenty of life left to live. So we'll get there. Like I said, maybe even on the show, maybe another show, maybe online or whatever. It doesn't matter, but we'll get there. Right now, we're going to start with these 7 questions, because these are the ones that started this whole conversation, this pseudo debate sort of thing that we're doing right now, which is more of a discussion. But I'm going to read the questions and then reveal your answers. And there's 7 of them.
Yeah.
The 7th one is the cognitive disequilibrium one. That's the one that blew me away. We got to that 7th one. I was like, what? Utterly shocked. And that's where the God in the Matrix comes from. So so now we get to the place where this is the part why we were late today by a couple of minutes, because I was trying to finish up this presentation. And I don't know how it's going to work, because I'm still new to adding presentations from Google, slides to this. So I don't know if it's going to give me all the slides or just the first one. If it's just the first one, then, applaud me for at least getting one up here. And then I'll just have to read the rest. But I was trying to make it visual for you guys. So here we go. Here's the first one. First question I asked Rick. From an ethical standpoint, I believe you have already admitted that God endorsed murder, rape, and slavery in the Bible. Are we on the same page here? You answered yes. That in itself is just absolutely honest, man. I don't know. I actually, Dustin and I have talked about, we don't actually know what to do with you, because you're so honest that it just throws us off our game. It's like, what? You said yes to this? Most people try to argue this, or try to make it, not true or whatever, or try to make excuses for why these things, but you're just flat out, yep, he does. So there you go. This first one. Here we go. Oh, yes, it's working.
You did it.
Yeah, I know, right? Number 2, I believe you have or would admit that God could have prohibited all of these in any economy, since he's God, and could have designed his plan in a way that was consistently ethically and morally good. Do you think God could have prohibited murder, rape, and slavery for Israel, since he is omniscient and knew that the A&E culture was devaluing certain humans, especially women?
Yes.
The answer was yes. Right. So here we go. That's a logical flow of thought. So far I'm thinking, oh, I got this guy by the horn. I got him. This is a piece of cake. You get number 3. Do you think murder, rape, and slavery are wrong under any circumstances, and to condone and endorse any of them is not good?
Yes.
Your answer was yes. All right. So it's like, okay, this guy's tracking with me a little too easy here. I'm like, what is going on? Number 4, if God endorsed murder, rape, and slavery, actions you agree are wrong under any circumstances, wouldn't this mean that God's actions in these instances are immoral?
Yes.
And you said yes. So, you can imagine, here am I on my side of the computer. I'm in my glory. I'm like, this is great. I see this guy seeing the truth. Everything's wonderful. Go to number 5. You say, I ask, can a God who is defined as all good, all knowing, and all powerful logically exist if he has acted immorally?
No.
And you said no. So I even twisted on this. I even made it a no question just to see if you were like paying attention. You still said the right answer. No. Like, okay. We're getting somewhere here. This is logically flowing every step of the way. Perfect. Question number 6. It's getting hot now. Number 6, is Yahweh the all good, all knowing, and all powerful God that has acted immorally?
Yes.
And you said yes.
Mm-hmm.
Holy cow. All right, so everybody just take a breath for a second here and just realize where we are here in this 7-question process here. Rick's answers are not your typical Christian answers. Definitely not, man. You are absolutely just being flat out honest and not letting anything persuade you to try to, get out of it or whatever. You're just saying flat out the right answers. I'm like, holy cow. So I'm at a head scratcher here, and I'm like, well, this last question should be a piece of cake then. I got him. He's going to have to actually admit what I want him to admit. And we get to question 7. And the question is, if Yahweh is the all good, all knowing, and all powerful God that has acted immorally, thereby falling into the category of a God that cannot logically exist, then here is my final question. Does Yahweh, the God of the Bible, exist? And you answered
Yes.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
Floored me completely in the only way that I personally can understand it, at least at this stage of my life. That contradicted the other 6 answers that you gave.
Yeah, I knew that you would see it that way for sure.
Of course.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that, but I know you, and you're not an idiot. You've got a great head on your shoulders. You literally, for all intents and purposes, looked to me like you were walking to a trap that you actually knew you were walking into. And yet you flat out gave me an answer that threw me off my rocker. So here we are. And I've talked to you obviously personally. So, I know a little bit about this, but I'm also intrigued in understanding it more fully. So what we're going to do now is you're going to take however much time you need here
Mm-hmm.
to explain your God in the Matrix, because that's the way you defined it to me. You called it God in the Matrix. There was a way in which all of those other 6 answers could be the way you answered them, and number 7 still be a yes. And that's what you're going to answer for us now. You cool? You ready to go?
I'm ready to go.
Lock it in. Let's do it.
All right. This might take a minute, and I want you to interrupt me here, if you have any questions along the way. Okay. So, excuse me, I'm drinking Coke, so my bad.
You're fine.
All right. So, my initiation or my introduction into my faith was come follow me. That's what I heard. That's what happened to me. That's all. That's it. I didn't have a background in Christianity. Okay. I didn't have a background in my family with Christianity. We had atheists. We were atheist. So, those words, when I went, I rode a church bus to a church. It was something they had just recently done. And it was my second or third time that I actually went to a little Sunday school, but they would take us upstairs where there were all kinds of people in this congregation. And I heard about the love of Jesus Christ. It wasn't a hellfire damnation. It wasn't about heaven. It really wasn't about anything. It was just about the love of Jesus. And I just remember on the inside of me hearing this drawing power. That was my initial introduction into Christianity. Now, I had been around a lot of other things other than Christianity, but I'd never experienced anything quite like that. And that's where it started for me experientially. Okay. It was just a call. I didn't really know much about Jesus. I didn't know about his word at that time. I just knew what I perceived in some of the people. And so that's where that was my introduction. I'll start there. Okay, that's my introduction. If you fast forward all the way up until, I don't know, maybe by the time 10 years ago, let's say 10 years ago, I have done much like you, got into the Bible, digging in, trying to understand what I'm reading, not necessarily in agreement with anybody that's in the church that's teaching, 100%. I don't think anybody can be 100% with anybody, but I just remember as I read those words, the more and more that I read them, the more and more confused I felt. Can I ask you a question? Did you feel confused when you read the Bible too, back when you were a Christian?
I guess I have to say yes. I guess it depends on what you mean confused, but yeah, probably because I never was settled, if that's what you mean. Like, it wasn't like, no matter where I was in my journey, there was always something off. And I was like, I got to fill this hole. Something's not fitting the puzzle right. So it's hard to say confused, because that makes it sound like I didn't have the ability or the cognizance to be able to understand it for myself. But maybe I'm misreading what you're asking me.
Yeah, I'm not trying to trap you. At all. I'm just
No,
asking a
no,
basic
no.
question. Like, did you have a moment where, like, you would be reading the Bible and you're like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, that doesn't sound like what I was taught. It sounds
Yeah,
opposite of
okay.
what I was taught.
If
And
that's
so
what
it's
you
kind of confused with it.
That's what I was looking for clarity on. Yeah, I didn't think you were trying to trick me, but that's what I was looking for clarity on. Yeah. If that's what you mean by that, then yeah, absolutely. Not just once, probably my entire Christian journey. That's why I kept shifting and couldn't stay in any particular belief system.
Yeah, because the more that you educated yourself on it, the more that it shifted your focus and your thoughts, and that education that's part of it. I remember all of the preaching from the pulpit about you need to read your Bible, the guilt trips, the high control that I was in, which was, you're only faithful if you're there every time the doors are open.
Right.
Those kinds of things that happen. So I've been through all of that, in my Christian walk. But this one aspect of my faith has always been incredibly basic, just very simple. And that is this deeply profound inner voice that always just roots itself. Now, I read your book. You cover a lot of this. The power that has had on me since then, it still exists. It's still here. It's here. Right. It was here before we started, and it's literally here right now. That power is something so profound that I began to think that the Bible, although I love the scriptures, that the Bible doesn't really fully explain the life, the average life of the modern day Christian. It really defines what life was like for people in an ancient culture. Like, for me, that's where that started to kind of surface. And I started seeing that humanity had brought in all kinds of things to this that wasn't necessarily in the pages of scripture. It was just ideas and thoughts and traditions and things that were handed down. Okay. So when I got to the baseline, I started asking myself the question, what is it that I actually have here? What is it? And I was trying to do it like outside the box. Okay. Now, I went through a cognitive behavioral therapy. Are you familiar with cognitive behavioral therapy?
Yep.
So as I was maturing,
Rick, do you want to just for a moment explain that though for the audience, because not everybody
cognitive behavioral therapy?
Yeah.
I'm going to. I'll tell you what it is.
I'm sorry. All right, my apologies. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to see. I'll define it. So, after being a Christian and after still going through life like everybody else does, you're a Christian, but you're still walking through life. You got jobs and you have families and things that happen. And I developed this. I was developing this anger, and I was constantly wrestling, like, on the inside of me, constantly wrestling with it. And I finally went to therapy. It was a secular therapy. I didn't want to go to a Christian one because I didn't want to hear Jesus is going to solve your problems, Rick. I wanted to hear, like, okay, let's really talk about what's wrong with me. I don't want to talk about demons. I don't want to talk about, like, let's talk. I see a lot of people that go to therapy and it seems to help them. So let's see if this works for me. And so at first I thought, I felt like I was betraying my faith in a lot of ways when I went into that therapy. And so I got in there with the therapist, and cognitive behavioral therapy is really interesting. Is the way that they work is they focus on the present. They don't go into the past. A lot of times they think when they go to therapy that they're going to sit down and talk about all their problems. Like, oh, this is what my mama did or my dad did when we were kids. Okay. I have a reason for this, Alan, I promise you. When I got into that therapy, the first thing that the therapist asked me was, Rick, are you prepared to get a divorce if you learn that you're incompatible with your wife? And I instantly got angry. That's why I was there, was for anger, because the only emotion it seemed like that I knew was anger. And I immediately got angry with him. I was like, why in the world are you asking me that question? So I come to a secular therapist, and the first thing you're going to talk to me about is divorce, right? And he said, no, it's fine. I said, no, I'm not getting a divorce because God hates divorce. Like that, you know what I mean? Like, you know what it is. God hates divorce. And so he's like, okay, fine. That's fine. Well, what cognitive behavioral therapy does, they don't try to eliminate your religion. What they try to do is work with it. If you have something that's important to you, your faith is important to you, then they will not negate that. They're trying to get you to a place of healing. That's what they're trying to do. And during that therapy, and I went for 8 months, during that therapy, we got down to the baseline of what it was that was actually making me angry. Okay. And the stimuli was simple. It could be anything. But if I felt like I was unloved or disrespected, that I was in danger of losing something like my family or kids, whatever, my response was, I don't want to lose everything. I don't want to be left alone. I don't want to have all this. And so I would just explode. Right. So the whole time that I was dealing with that, I always had that inner monologue, the inner monologue that that we do, where that what you're doing isn't what you should be doing. And it wasn't a guilty thing. It was more of a desperation thing. Do you understand what I mean? Like it was a desperation thing. So I got to this point where I was learning how to manage my anger by accepting the stimuli that was coming into me and kind of being like a fence, like a chain link fence, and letting the air and the words and the things pass by me, but keeping out the physical things that may harm me. In other words, still defend myself if something comes at me or whatever. But when it comes at me, to protect the heart, but also to let it filter. And what I learned was that my filter was messed up in my head. I had developed a filter wherever it was, where at some point in my life early on, or as I was growing, I developed a filter, and the way that the stimuli was coming in, the things that were in my life were coming in, were causing me, my filter was telling me react in such a way. Okay. So that was a very powerful moment in my life when I finally got to the point where I wasn't angry. And I thought about that for a long time. I was like, Jesus really didn't have anything to do with this. This was something that I did on my own, and I went to a therapist, and, this is something that I did for myself. And I remember feeling guilty about that, thinking, well, you got to give Jesus the credit for everything, Rick. You can't not do that. You have to give him the credit. And then I started thinking, I was like, well, why do I have to give him the credit for this? Because as far as I'm concerned, I'm the one that recognized the problem and felt it on the inside, and I'm the one that did the work. I'm the one that went after the work. I'm the one that paid for the work. Well, you wouldn't have a job if it wasn't for God. Okay. Well, you know what I mean? Like you talk about these things in your book too, Alan. Like we wrestle with ourselves. I remember seeing a short that you did about your mom had made this wonderful meal, and then they were thanking God for the meal, and you're like, I want to thank mom because she did such a great job cooking. But but there's this thing inside us where we're not allowed to have any, like, that's like giving ourselves glory.
Right.
Okay. Well, first of all, that's sickening. It's silliness, and I don't believe that it's scriptural either. I don't believe that that's scriptural. We do give thanks to God in all things. Yes, of course. But that doesn't mean that we can't be thankful because we did the work and had the effort, or mom made a great meal. Thank you, mom. God, I'm glad you gave me my mom. She's an awesome cook. Like, you can say those words together and it's still okay. Instead of thank you for, coming through her hands and making a great meatloaf. Like, that's not what we're talking about here. So anyway, let's get to this point. During that therapy, one of the things that I was wrestling with was good and evil, good and bad. What is good? What is bad? And I started learning that things that can come at me that are bad, that I can filter them in a particular way to where I can manage it. Okay. So that's really what opened my mind to this concept that we actually have very powerful minds. We have the ability to reason and to think on our own. And how powerful is that, right? And where is God's voice in the midst of all this stuff in my head? Now, in your book, you talk about this too. So what happened, Alan? Are you familiar with Sigmund Freud's idea about like man, like the inner man, the way it works? It's not, cognitive behavioral therapy doesn't work with Freud, but this is something that Freud does. Okay, it's kind of a fascinating concept. I promise you, this is all part of the Matrix stuff. Just give me a minute, okay? I'm
in no rush, dude. I'm in no rush.
Case.
If you take the whole hour, you do it. This is setting the foundation for our discussions. So you make sure you.
I can't wait to answer all.
By the way, just FYI, just right out the gate, your understanding of how you think it's still okay to give credit to yourselves. Eastgate Adoptionists has just paralleled you with Satan. Congratulations, okay. Rick.
Yeah.
All right, keep going.
How is that pride? Actually,
I don't know, man.
You can't even.
But bro, you remember my story, man. I got
yeah, I know.
And on probation for pride just because I thought I was right about something. You're not allowed to think you're right about anything.
Yeah. Or,
you're not allowed to. You get the credit for anything.
Right. Yeah. So then read Alan's book to get out of that stuff.
Yes, thank you.
Exactly. Adoptionist. You could actually go read his book and find out that you can actually do things that aren't considered prideful. You can just be thankful that you can do things and be happy about it. Sigmund Freud used this description of the inner man, and he talks about the id, the ego, and the superego. Are you familiar with this?
Yeah, well, I mean, familiar enough, but not necessarily how it relates to what you're talking about. Let's keep going.
All right, so the idea here is that the inner working of a human mind is that the first stimuli that comes in, the id is the one that says, like, for example, if somebody like yells at you, the id says, oh, I'm going to take you out. I'm going to punch you. I'm going to do whatever. Like, that's that carnal, deep, just primal nature of man that's down deep inside us. It's like, you're dead. I'm going to kill you, like whatever. And then the ego in the mind steps up and says, okay, if you're going to be angry and you're going to attack him, let's think about what's going to, like, is there anybody else around that's going to hurt you? Is this going to be a good move? Think about the relationship. What, like you're rational. It's like a rational thinking mind. But then you go to the next tier and the superego says, all right, I've thought it all out. Number one, primal guy, you're not doing it unless it's fight or flight. Primal guy, all right, that split thing, protect yourself at all costs. Then the other one says, okay, we thought it all out. We're not going to fight back. We're going to use our words. We're going to try to talk. So that's what the man that Freud would say, that this is a very basic idea here. Okay. All right. The thing that I learned that, and I do want to ask you a question here in a minute, Alan, because I need to, it's important.
Okay.
Whenever that voice that was rationalizing this, when I had a moment, that primal, And then I was thinking about the primal, and the super ego was working its way through in my mind. There is a voice that goes beyond it. It's a voice, and it sounds very familiar. It's a voice that says, you're going to let him hit you. And it's a shocking voice. It's one that is the opposite of all three of those inner workings that's going on in the man. That is what I was introduced to as a child. Okay. That is what I came to know and hear that's going on inside of me. These words that Jesus speaks are uniquely different than the other words that I've heard. Okay. Even within scripture, I need to make that clear, make it clear. Even within scripture, the words of Jesus have a profound effect on me. So much so that I came to trust those words so much when I heard them that I built every layer and foundation of my being upon them. And while I was going through therapy, all of those things that I was learning were things that he had already said, things that he was showing outside. I'm just talking about man, just the way that man is and what we do outside of man, outside of the judgment language and all of the preterist theologies and all that other stuff, just living what those words meant to me. It literally became my foundation. And that is a constant that I engage with. I don't mean that I go sit down in the Bible and just read words. I'm talking about these are things that permeate who I am. They're still very much here. They're the things that tell me, answer questions honestly. Even though it's very uncomfortable for me to sit down and to talk with people that hate God, it's the voice that tells me to do it. It's the voice that tells me to engage them and to talk to them. And I don't have an understanding of what that timeline or what might be. It's not all the time. It's just an occasion. You were a powerful one for me. When you were reaching out and the things that just things that I'd heard about you, it's just a powerful thing for me to hear that on the inside, that you're going to love him. Even though he hates me, you're going to love him. That's what you're going to do. So that makes you feel.
If I may, I just want to draw a clarification. I don't hate God. I just don't believe he exists.
So. I understand. Well, but you want to kill him, and you don't kill something unless you hate it.
I don't actually.
You don't kill without hate, Alan.
I don't believe a God exists, so I hate the idea of God. That is true.
Well, if you don't believe a God exists, you can't kill it either.
I can kill the idea of God, which is the whole point of the book.
You should say how to kill the idea of God the easy way.
I mean, sure, obviously, but Nietzsche should have said that too then, and he obviously didn't believe a real God existed.
Who cares?
Nobody critiques him for that.
No, there's plenty to critique Nietzsche about.
I know, but nobody critiques him for that. The parallel is clear. Nobody is saying God really exists who is arguing that you can kill him. If we really believed God existed, I can't kill him.
Yeah,
it's an idea. So I don't hate him. I hate the idea of God and hate what it does to people in that religion. Mm-hmm. But no, I don't hate God because I don't believe he exists any more than I hate the Easter Bunny. I don't hate anything that exists. I mean, well, I do. I hate some people.
So this is where the disconnect. This is where the disconnect comes. Okay, so
yeah,
things that you say like that make me very uncomfortable. Okay, it makes me uncomfortable for obvious reasons. And
wait, which part? What makes you uncomfortable?
Just saying the things like, I hate the idea of God. I want to kill God. I want to take God out. Like, I don't believe God exists. So therefore, when you have somebody like me that says, man, I believe that God exists with everything that's in me. Like, I believe that.
Sure.
You obviously understand how uncomfortable it is to engage in a conversation. I've gotten used to it by being with Andy Bishop, our atheist, on the podcast.
No, and I get that, but you have to understand the alternative too. It makes me uncomfortable to have to dialogue with somebody that praises this wonderful God. And I absolutely abhor everything the Bible teaches about this God.
Yeah, and why? So why do you do it? Why do you engage?
Because my hope is that I can help people see the flaws in this idea that of this God they believe in, so that they can live a freer life. Because right now, I think you're living by manipulation, fear, all the awful things this God taught, like rape, slavery, murder, pedophilia, things that I've told you about before. And I think that by praising this kind of God and living by his standards, I don't think you're living the best life possible, especially if you're living by the rules of Jesus or the love of Jesus, because Jesus is the Son of God in the Bible. So if he is the same God, he obviously condones everything that his Father did. So therefore, everything in the Old Testament is condoned by Jesus. And if all those things we saw in the questions are condoned by Jesus, that makes Jesus a horrible person too. So
Yeah, and I know where you're coming from with that.
right.
So
So I'm
if
just
you
saying, like,
have,
it's bothersome for me too, but I do it because I genuinely care about people, and I'm trying to free them, people like you and others, from the tyranny of this God that you believe exists when he actually doesn't, so that you can actually live your own life and no longer do that. That's why I do it. I actually do have a good motive. I actually genuinely care. I'm not just out here trying to destroy faith for the sake of destroying faith. Like I actually think there's a better life out here.
oh
Uh,
yeah, I mean, I read that. I read that in your book.
sure. So I
I
mean,
mean, you
so,
talk about that too. Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, I get your discomfort, but I don't mind having these conversations because I think there's a betterment in the end. I think you also talk about it with people like me because you also think there's a betterment in the end, because your hope is to demonstrate the glory of God and hope to draw me back into Christ. So
The love of
we're
God.
we're both sharing the same perspective, just on opposite sides. So
You're right.
expressing that there's a discomfort, that should be a no-brainer. That's an obvious.
Hmm.
We're both sitting on that side of the table.
Yep, I agree. So that, so for you, it's so powerful for you to engage me because you want, because I guess because you've experienced this for 40 plus years, you don't want other people to be like you. You want to try to get people out before they waste all that time, right?
And unfortunately, a lot of people that I'm hoping to get out will have wasted all that time anyway. So
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, but yes, in theory, if I could help everybody that is just starting out in this faith and get them out before they waste, 40 years of life, yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. Um,
Yeah.
and the things I talk about in my book, you obviously can't cover everything you ever went through in a book. I mean, unless I literally did nothing but talk about my story. But there's so much, like there's even so much more than I cover in my book, like that I would absolutely say this this Christianity literally destroyed my life in so many ways. It frustrates me. Now, there's so much positive that came out as a result of it now, because I can benefit from the skills I gained and from the things I've learned. And this book came out of it, for example. So I mean, it's not all horrible. But would I have rather lived a different life? Sure, in a lot of ways, I sure would have. But it is what it is, and here's where I'm at. So I mean, for me, it's like the past is the past. I can't sit here and dwell on it anymore. So for me, it was get it out of my system, write a book about it, and now for me, I get to move forward and live this best life and help other people get out of it. So that's where I'm at.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, it's like I don't want to sidetrack where you're going with this, because the whole point of this is to understand why you think that seventh question can be answered the way it was and still resolve the problem with the other six questions.
Right.
I struggle with that. And so I want to have this conversation because it may be that there are a lot of other Christians and maybe even people who left Christianity that struggle with that. So I don't want to derail this by this, you're in it for this reason, I'm in it for that. We're obviously in it for self-motivating reasons. We both care about the fact that the life we're living is the better life. You
Yes.
wouldn't do this if you didn't.
Hmm.
So here we are, and that's why we're doing this. So at the end of the day, you're going to think your better life is the way you're living, and I'm going to think my better life is the way I'm living. So, one day I might persuade you, one day you might persuade me, or one day we'll never persuade each other. But at the end of the day, we're both going to be still good friends. That's all. I
Yeah.
really,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
that's all I care about. I'm fine with that.
so, all right. So after going through all of the therapy, after learning a tremendous stuff, a lot about myself and using a secular therapy to do so, um, I was able to learn more about my mind. And one of the things that really stuck to me was when I was talking about the good and the bad, or the good and the evil, was that our ideas, the way that we think of good and evil, is really where the problems are for us. And we've tried to wrestle with how to define morality, or those arguments, God is the moral lawgiver, and so therefore it has to come from that. And it to me, it became a problem because I started going back because like you said about Jesus, because he is God, therefore he is with Yahweh. Therefore, in any economy, if he's doing these things, that it's the same person, right? Yeah, man, that's a tough one because you're like, well, how does this work? And something that was very powerful for me was the idea of the first way that I entered in, I called this the matrix, that I entered into the matrix was when I heard the voice and I responded and the voice stuck with me. That was the start. Then getting involved in the Bible and learning all of the problems that I was facing with the Bible and things that were in it. Then uh, also managing my brain and the way that I think about life and going through therapy and coming to the other side of this and realizing that there's something going on here with good and evil that is a problem. So I went back to the scriptures because we all enter in a matrix in our mind. We all have one. It's the way we create reality for ourselves. All of us do it. You might say, well, this is just reality. Well, no, that's actually your reality. You have a reality, and your life is completely different from my life. And we all have these realities that are coming at. But we all like to think that there's this baseline, like, well, this is reality, so therefore we all should think about it the same way and do it the same way. Well, that just can't be. It doesn't work that way. I wasn't born in a third world country, and I'm not trying to find rice for today. I'm overweight and can eat whatever I feel like it, and I'm complaining because I have heartburn. You know what I mean? Like everybody's.
Dude, I knew we had so much more in common than we thought.
Yeah. So, but I went back to the Bible and I thought about how it starts off in the beginning. God created the heaven and the earth. It just starts off with that. It comes right out. It's not a proof. It's literally a claim. It's a claim. We will say it's a statement. You argue in the book, no, it's a claim, right? That's just a claim. And I was like, okay, that's fair. That's fair. It's a claim. And then it goes on and it explains, the hierarchy, of whether you want to call it temple imagery or you want to call it the creation of the earth and your 6,000 year guy, whatever. I don't care. It doesn't matter. It goes through all of this stuff and introduces this world. And if you've already come into the matrix via the Christ way on the New Testament side, you are going to be forced to go back through the Old Testament. You can't unhinge them or divorce them from one another. They have to go together. And so you start going back and you learn all of this stuff in the Old Testament. This one spot, man, is such to me is such a critical spot. And it's the garden scene, okay? Whether you think it's a real snake or it's a person or it's a deity or I don't care. Whatever you want to think, just go think it. At this point, it's just what's being presented, okay? First of all, the God of this Bible, reading it in English, planted a tree of knowledge of good and evil in that same garden. He planted it there, okay? So the problem of good and evil was put in there by God. Then he commands the man and tells him, on the day that he eats, you shall surely die. And then evidently the woman learns from the man or the woman learns from God. We don't know. It doesn't say. It introduces it to the man, right out of the gate. And then we got this serpent character. The serpent character is in this place. And he's obviously around this tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And he asks her the question, can you eat of any tree? Now I'm thinking about this again. I'm thinking about this from a matrix perspective. You're entering into this world. We're following this. We're just following the line here. We get to this spot and he says, can you eat of any tree? And the woman says, we can eat of any tree except the one. We can't even touch that one. All right. Well, it doesn't say anywhere that she wasn't allowed to touch it, but whatever. So then this serpent character twists it and gives her a 3-part answer where one of them is false and the other 2 are true. You will not surely die. That's the one. Your eyes will be opened and you will be like God, knowing both good and evil. Right? Am I boring you?
No, no. I'm anxious to see where all this goes in and how the Matrix, God of the Matrix, fits. Yeah.
All right. Now, the Bible says that when he says this to her, that this tree became a delight to her eyes. And that then she thought this was good. The desire arose to make one wise and become like God. So when she goes to this position, this is prior to sin, as far as the Bible is concerned, right? As far as the Bible is concerned, we have always called it the fall of man after the man eats it and the sinners of the world.
Right.
But what was inside that tree was the knowledge of good and evil. In other words, if I had not, let's take evil off for just a second and say that it's the knowledge of good, that's still the tree that'll kill you. The knowledge of good is just as bad as the knowledge of evil in that tree. Okay? So I suddenly began to think about what that really was. What is this author trying? Is this a literal thing? Like, or what are we doing? Like, what's happening here? And so it seemed like the walking with God part and being in a relationship with God and being in that paradise scenario and having access to this eternal ability by eating this one tree that you can live forever, right? You don't know that you can live forever until after the curse. Then we learn, oh, well, I don't want to eat in that tree anymore because if they do, they live forever. So, right. So this before we don't know that. Am I right? We don't know that the tree of life is eternal. So at this stage, when she has the delight in her eyes, this is happening inside the mind. This is where language comes into the mind and the mind interacts with that language and an action happens. Okay. It's just like my cognitive behavioral therapy. It was stimuli in, work it out on the inside, response. Okay. So the woman does that. She hears one right thing or two right things and one wrong thing. She makes the decision and she does the action and she eats of it. And then she hands it to her husband, and we don't even know what's going on with him. Okay. It doesn't, I mean, Paul is later is the one that tells us, but in the context of the story in Genesis, it does not even discuss what Adam's thoughts were. It only talks about the woman's thoughts, not the man's. Okay. So whether it's direct disobedience or whatever. From the moment that the man eats this and the curses start coming down in this matrix, he deals with the man by cursing the ground that he works from, which causes sweat on his brow. It says that he increases the pain of childbearing, whether it's through birth or through what it means for motherhood. I mean, whatever, right? And that her desire was going to be contrary to her husband. And by that, he was going to dominate her. And then with the serpent, so you're going to be on the ground and I'm going to put enmity between you and the seed of the woman, and, you know, between you and the woman and thy seed and her seed. It's the only time the Bible ever uses it. The only time her seed is ever used in the whole of Scripture. Okay. So this dynamic starts right there. It's the knowledge of good and the knowledge of evil being the primary way in which now the filter, by the way, she did not have the fall when she was thinking this way. This happens after. Do you get what I mean? The deception that comes in happens before she's fallen into sin, before her eyes are opened, or whatever those things mean. It happens prior to. Once that occurs and you go into this world, now you have the knowledge of good and the knowledge of evil, the ways in which the gods will think or God thinks. And it's all wrong. That's what is being introduced. It's all wrong. Now, I have experienced myself. I have experienced what that is just by being alive, just by being able to interact with society and with people and with things. I am very aware that sometimes things that I think are good are not, and sometimes the things that I think are evil are not. And I've learned about ethics and the way that we compound morality and the things that we do with it. And everybody wants to put this morality. I don't know why we want to look at God as the moral lawgiver, because later, what you find out is that Christ settles this all in himself. He settles it all. But look up the time. I'm so sorry. It's taken me so long. The issue here is when we start getting into the Old Testament, we start dealing with the patriarchs and the flooding and the murders of people and the raping of women and the pedophilia and all this. When you ask me these questions from an ethical standpoint, and you're asking me for a yes or no, you're not giving me any type of ability to respond to your question. I have to answer according to your paradigm from an ethics standpoint of modernity. We're going to start there. Modern thinking. How could God say, go ahead and kill all of these people on this earth? Let's drown them all except for 8 and be good. Dude, that is not ethics. That's not ethics. And you know it's not ethics. Nobody in their right mind would think that that was good from a standard ethical point, right? So the only way you could possibly get it back to where it's good is that it has to be reframed in the world that it's in, the matrix that it's in. So, but wait, God is above, so he should be able to, sure, he should be able to do all kinds of things, like not put the tree of the knowledge of good and evil in that place to start with. We could argue any of this. For most, they look at this word as myth. They look at the Bible as fraught with all kinds of contradictions and all things. Like, I get it. I get why people think this way. Okay? But from a standpoint of a Christian, when you walk up to a Christian and you say, you know, what do you believe about God? It's either A, it's something that somebody has taught them and it could be right or it could be wrong, or it's something that they read in the Bible and it could be right or it could be wrong. Like, that's the world in which you live. Dude, all of this data, all of this logic is in fact the problem itself, according to the Bible. It's the problem itself. Are you understanding what I'm saying, Alan?
I do. And one of the questions I asked was, could such a God logically exist? And the implication is in reality. And your answer was no.
Yes.
So
again,
concern,
I have to answer from your point, Alan.
No, because my concern with everything you just explained is that you've defined a God in a matrix called the Bible. Fine. Mythology does this all the time. In your little book, your guy can do whatever he wants and get away with it if he's a fictional character. But if you're going to say this God is real and then turn around and say that logically that kind of God can't exist, that's a contradictory statement.
Mm-hmm.
I have no problem with your mythological God. That's
pull up that question. Can you pull it back up?
Sure. Let's see if I can go
look
back
at it.
to it. I think it was 5. Let's see. Can a God who is defined as all good, all-knowing, and all-powerful logically exist if he has acted immorally? And you said
right.
No.
Right. Okay. So I understand where you're coming from. So with that, that's the difficulty of yes or no questions. It's also the difficulty of the way that we're going to.
All right. Well, let's just pretend like it wasn't a yes or no question. Go ahead and elaborate on that then.
Pull the question back up.
Okay.
All right. Can a God who is defined as all good, all knowing, and all powerful logically exist if he has acted immorally? The immoral is based on the framework in which we create. All right. Is it immoral if God floods the earth?
We create? I mean, you actually agreed with me that these actions, it wasn't like you said, that these actions are immoral, or that they could be moral in some society. There was one question where I flat out asked, could these questions in any economy be considered moral? And your answer was that they couldn't be. I don't know. I don't want to read it all again because it's a lot of convoluted. But your answer was yes, the way I phrased it. But that was the point of the question. Like you actually literally said yes. All of these things are immoral. Yes, all of God did all of these things and endorsed all of these things. And yes, a God like this cannot logically exist.
Okay.
And then you turn around and you say, but that's not fair. My God of the Bible must exist because he's in this matrix. And I'm like,
I'm not.
okay,
No. I never said it's not fair.
okay.
I
All
never
right.
said it's not fair.
Sorry, I thought you had said that I didn't give you a chance because it was just yes or no questions.
Well, I was saying no, that's not about fair. It's just that's the problem with yes or no
Okay.
questions.
Well,
I
then
mean, I'm fine
elaborate.
with yes
Do
or
you
no.
want to go through each question one at a time and you elaborate then? Would that be better?
Like on the next episode, we're already at an hour.
Yeah. Would that be helpful if we went question by question?
Sure,
You had a chance
you
to.
can go through it. I want to define this a little bit more. I mean, I feel like I need to define this more.
I mean, that's fine. I have no problem with that. Like I said, I'm not trying to rush you. I feel
Yeah,
like
I
I
know.
gave
I
you a
understand.
pretty
No,
good
you didn't rush me at all.
to do that. So if you feel like you need more time, I'm okay with that. Like I said, this is the foundation of this whole series that we're doing. So
Yes.
if you need a whole nother episode, I'm fine with that. I just want to genuinely understand why you believe your God of this matrix, which from what I'm gathering, is called the Bible. That seems to be what your matrix is. Why you believe that God logically exists when you've already agreed that kind of God can't logically exist. Like, I have no problem saying he exists in your matrix, which I would call a myth, but you're calling it reality. And so I'm saying, if that's reality as well, how does that square with your other reality that you answered to my question that it can exist? Like, I'm
Yeah.
lost on that. I'm
So
trying to grasp
did
that.
you? I guess I did not explain myself well enough when I was talking about learning the issues with good and evil myself through secular reasoning. And then when I came to the Bible and was looking at good and evil from we're looking at good and evil from two different paradigms is what's happening. I
Well,
guess I
no,
didn't explain
because
myself very well.
in your personal example, you're dealing with a human reality,
Hmm.
whereas in the Bible, you're dealing with a God who is all powerful, all knowing, and incapable of doing things entirely different than you are as a human. So it works on a human level to fail and to not do this correctly, but at a
Then it
God
becomes
level,
about then it becomes about choice,
well,
right?
sure, on a human
That's what you're going
level.
to say. Well, no, not on a human level. I just meant like you were saying that God is capable of doing anything within any economy. So whenever he decides to engage in what we would even say, well, no, that's wrong, that's evil. Then that how you said you don't like those answers when they're like, well, if God does it and it's evil and then it's still good, then it's good. And you hate that answer. And I
Well,
understand.
you
I
agree
understand.
that that's a horrible answer, I think.
I hate the way that answer is produced, especially without any type of construct built behind it to even begin to even understand it.
But I guess
It's one thing to say, look, can you agree with me that we as human beings make all kinds of choices based upon ethics that are both fair and unfair? Like, for example, if one man decides, okay, this plane is going to crash into the White House, so therefore we're going to take that plane down, that's an ethical choice that is good to a majority, but not quite so good to the people on the plane. Do you
yes,
follow me with
because as humans,
as humans?
sometimes you have to make decisions not only on the spur of the moment, but that are best for the largest whole that you can work with. Whereas if you're God, I can promise you have a way to work it out that's best for everybody
Mhm,
because you have that kind of power. And my question to you is today, let's just say today, because
mhm.
remember, he's eternally existent, right? There's no time with God. It's not like in the first century he was bound by some rules and today he's not, right? So today, just today, does God, in your mind, condone slavery, murder, pedophilia, all those things?
No.
Well, then why would he condone it back then in any matrix?
For what we have today, for a purpose over time.
But you're okay. So let's go back to your. I asked this question, and your answer was yes. You actually said, um, under any. Where was that question? I can't. I guess maybe I didn't ask it in these series of questions. I can't remember. Oh yeah, here it is. I believe you and I would admit that God could have prohibited all of these in any economy, since He's God and could have designed His plan in a way that was consistently ethically and morally good. Do you think God could have prohibited murder, rape, and slavery for Israel since He's omniscient and knew that any culture was devaluing certain humans, especially women? And you said yes.
Yes, I'm still saying yes. I'm
So
not saying no to that.
he devalued women and all these other people groups in that culture, and that was okay, but it wouldn't be okay today. And God never changes. If God never changes, then
Think
why would
about,
he do it okay, and why would he be okay with it in one culture and not another?
dude, you're asking why would, okay, if we're gonna be in the Bible and you've been in the Bible your whole life, how could you even say that you don't see the progressive revelation of God over time? You don't see that?
No, I do. I see the whole point of what the story tells. My problem isn't that the new covenant resolves all the old covenant issues. I have no problem with that. It's not that Jesus is
Even
bad.
within the old covenant, as the thing is, as it evolves from
Yeah.
heaven and earth to heaven and earth to heaven and earth.
No, I get that. My beef isn't that the story doesn't show a resolution as God progresses it.
I know it's because he's eternal. You want him to be good in this one
You're
particular
absolutely
time.
right. I want him to be good in all economies. So you're telling me he's evil in one and good in another?
Does he not say that I create good and evil? Does he not say that?
Creates evil, but is he evil?
He uses evil.
No,
He
that's not what
uses
I
it.
asked you. Is
He
he
forms
evil?
it. Look, if you put the knowledge of good and evil in the garden, he obviously knows where we know
That's
where it
not
comes
what's
from.
happening, though. He's giving specific instructions on how to have slaves and how to rape women.
Okay.
He's
You
telling them,
also,
here's how you go about this horrible act. I'm going to instruct you as a wonderful, good God. Here's how you should treat women and slaves. And here, oh, and while you're at it, I'm going to tell you how much I desired this probably 12-year-old
I gotta
image
have
of a
more
girl.
time. I gotta have more time, man, because
No, of
like,
course you do. I get it.
no, I do. I mean, I can't answer all that. I mean,
I know you can't. I know you can't. I can't
okay.
either. We can't. This is going to be on and on and on. I mean, it's going to
Yeah.
be, which is fine. It's totally
Part
cool. I mean,
part 52.
when I promoted this, I told everybody today was going to cause cognitive disequilibrium. I fully believed that. And here we are. And so there's a lot to resolve here. What we've done is we've created a mess. And now we've got a
Yes.
lot of time that we have to do to resolve this because this is not going to be easy. So obviously you think there is a way in which the matrix you believe God exists in makes him somehow good, even though he's acting evil acts. And
I have to clarify this. I have to clarify it because I use the word matrix just because I know of the movie The Matrix. If you guys have ever seen it, being jacked into a particular type of reality is the idea that I'm talking about with the matrix, not necessarily the mathematical version of it, but matrix as in there is a reality that jacks into another reality. Have you ever seen The Matrix? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, of course.
And then you have the machine side and you have the human side. You have the human side that's on the outside, you know, and all of that, the way that it works, that we in our reality, we all make these choices. You know, I can create here's another matrix I can create. 13.8 billion years ago, the universe began with a big bang. Like we have some measurable things that we can do, and it's really nice to think that we have that beginning, right? But we really don't know, and that's okay. We don't have to. That doesn't mean that science is negated. It just means that we don't really have a beginning. But it can and does generate realities for some people that are based on that as fact, when in reality it's not, right? So we have these ideas, all of us do, all of the time, where we enter into these realities. And so what I want to try to do is to get everybody to understand what the words of Jesus were and the culmination of all of these economies, all of these ages, all of these purposes were for, and why it's real. That's what I'm trying to accomplish.
And that's fair. And we're going to have as many episodes as we need to do that. That'll be fun. I know we need to end because I know you got other
Do
responsibilities.
you have questions or people that are calling you a cult leader?
We're going to look at the questions. I have one personal last question that I want to ask you, and then we're going to jump into the questions, and we'll genuinely end the show on this. And this might be a tough question, and I hope it's okay to ask. Do you believe that Jesus, the Jesus of the New Testament that you've come to adore and love, do you believe that he condoned his father's endorsements of rape, slavery, murder, and pedophilia?
I believe that as he taught those around him, like the Pharisees and the Sadducees and them that were there, that he taught something that is very unique in Scripture. He said to them, they said, Moses gave us the right to a certificate of divorcement. And Jesus' response was, Moses gave that to you because of the hardness of your heart. Now, go back to the beginning, he said. What did God expect? Now, what that does is it creates a dissonance for the theological mind, because now Jesus has made the things that Moses has implanted into the law as suspect. So where do you find that truth? Does that make sense to you?
Well, that wasn't my question, though.
No, but it is, because where you're seeing...
It wasn't that Jesus condoned Moses' actions. It was that Jesus condoned his father's. Because as I said to you, and as you know very well, and as you admitted in these questions, God himself endorsed these actions. And I'm asking you, if not Moses, but God, did Jesus endorse his father's endorsements?
Yes, Jesus endorsed his father's endorsements.
Okay, so then Jesus also is 100% behind rape, slavery, murder, and pedophilia. And maybe only in certain economies, fine. But the fact that in any economy he did that, you have to now contend with the fact that your Jesus that you love actually thought that at some point in history, those were wonderful and good things, because he's always good.
Mm-hmm. I see what you mean.
That's a lot.
I understand what you mean,
bro. That's heavy.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's.
So we got homework. So how many people think I'm in a cult now?
Well,
this week?
Eastgate, at least we know that. Let's see. Let's start from the beginning. This wasn't a question, but I from the very beginning, I thought this was important. And this is one thing that I think you and I both could respond to this, but I'll let you do it, because I think you could respond to this. You need, and I think he's talking to me, you need to prove God acted immorally and not for greater purpose. This is where you fail, and therefore your argument fails too. Right. I mean, I've already been arguing this, that the greater purpose serves no reason when it comes to.
I mean, you can't write 2 sentences and think you just solved his argument. That's kind of silliness. We've been talking about this for an hour and 8 minutes.
Right. Well, that was very, very, very beginning. But I mean,
I understand I know what he's saying, but
I do
that's
too.
But I'm trying to do the long form. I'm doing long form,
and it's important you do long form because there's a lot to cover here. But Maverick, to answer your Maverick being frank, the greater purpose, again, as I argue in my book, does not solve the problem that in any economy, for any reason, God chose to endorse these things. That's my struggle. It's not that he couldn't have a great purpose for it. Fine. But it's the fact that God never changes. And it's not that he just allowed it or permitted it because people were sinful. Like Rick was saying, Moses permitted it. That's not what these texts teach. They're actually showing God's endorsement by command of how to wipe out nations and how to rape women and how to do that. It's sick. So I don't think you're really seeing the problem here. It's not because God can have a greater purpose, but that still doesn't solve the issue that Rick and I are trying to resolve here and figure out. All right, let's see. You already know Eastgate can't stand you. So, we got lots of stuff coming from him. Not so much questions, just a bunch of statements. So I'm going to pass by them. Let's see. That's also not a question. It's a statement. I want to avoid some of these. I want people to be kind. We don't need, atheists are horrible or theists suck because of this. Give us a question. Don't make a bunch of comments. Here's Eastgate. He does actually ask a question. He says, if Revelation is already completely fulfilled, what did the second beast of Revelation 13 represent? And why did it have 2 horns like a lamb? What does this have to do with what we're talking about?
Eastgate, I understand you keep bringing these questions up, but this isn't a full preterist argument right now. We're talking about something completely different.
It's not anything to do with this conversation. Let's see. Homemaker calling. Thanks for being on this show. Great to have you. Where are these questions coming from? Is this in your book, Alan? Oh, thank you. That's a good question. I suppose I should have led with that.
That's Lily. That's Lily.
Yeah,
who was here last
Lily.
time.
She's awesome. She's freaking great. I should have led with that. So where are these coming? So this is from a Facebook post on my wall that I posted. So this has got to be.
Say that. You did say that earlier.
Oh, did I? Okay.
Yeah,
well, I'll say it again just because somebody might have missed it. This was back in, I want to say, it's got to be September of last year. Because I was just ramping up for the release of my book, maybe October, it could be. And I was just throwing out a lot of really controversial stuff just to create some traffic and stuff. And Rick responded to one of them, and him and I had already become pretty good friends talking on the phone and stuff. But there was one in particular that kind of obviously caught his attention, and I think it was on the rape. I think it was that one specifically. And then in that we had a whole dialogue, and we were just doing the same thing most people do, just like talking past each other. And I said, hey, let's try something. Let's just do 7 questions each, and we just say yes or no. And that's where this came from, and that's why Rick's going to have the same opportunity to return to do the same thing, and I'll just answer yes or no when he has his questions. Nigel Taylor from Australia, watching from Australia. I appreciate Rick's raw honesty to the 7 questions, as do I, man. Absolutely. My question is, if Jesus is the Yahweh of the Old Testament, why would Rick follow him? It's a great question. It's the one
Nigel Taylor. He's my friend from Australia.
Is he really?
Dude, I love this guy.
Nigel, man, you and I, we're going to double team this guy, man. We're going to tag team.
Well, Nigel actually was he actually was a Christian that actually went into atheism for a while, and then he came back to Christianity. It's a fascinating discussion.
Wait, so he's a Christian now?
Well, at least the last time we talked. Nigel, feel free to pipe in and say something if it's any different, but I believe so. He's a full preterist.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So if Jesus is of the Yahweh of the Old Testament, why would Rick follow him? Well, I follow him because he is the Father. He's the Father. Jesus makes it very clear that Yahweh is the Father. And so I follow him because I love Jesus. First of all, that's the easy one. If you're asking me like to answer everything that I just talked about over the last hour and 15 minutes, I follow him because he is, and Christ is, I'm a Trinitarian. So I believe that, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit are one. And so whatever Yahweh does, then Jesus obviously is too. That's why those 7 questions are so difficult to answer. But being honest is, you have to be. And then in order for me, because it did create cognitive dissonance for a long time, I began wrestling with the knowledge of good and evil and how things worked within the structure of the Bible, but also was wrestling with how I answer things ethically today versus ethically then. And are those ethics the same? And what does that mean and how that works? So that's what we have to define. And I'm going to try my best to do so in long form. But that's a great question, Nigel. I follow him.
And it's one, just FYI, I'm going to continue to press you on throughout
I know you are.
series, because that to me is the epitome question here, because I also believe Jesus was Yahweh of the Old Testament. And so when I say, why does he condone the condonings of Yahweh of the Old Testament, I literally believe that Jesus was the one who endorsed these things. So, I mean, I mean it very fully when I say Jesus is not a good guy.
Yeah. I mean, do you understand how easy, like, I have these specific, really like firm beliefs in my heart, right? In the Trinity. That's one of them. Do you know how much easier it would be to just like go with Marcion and say, yeah, Yahweh was the bad God and Jesus is the good one, and let's kick these books out and all that. Like, that's not what's happening.
But if you went that route, then you wouldn't be a Christian anyway, because what's the point? You would deny the entirety, one of the most foundational aspects of Christianity.
Yeah, I mean, that's my point is that if you are a Christian and you hold to these views, then you can't just say, well, I don't condone what Yahweh did, but Jesus is cool. That's not what I'm saying.
Right, because clearly he isn't. He's the same. You have the same problem with Jesus.
I'm just saying they're the same. They're the same. Yeah.
Right. So whatever problem you have with Yahweh in the Old Testament, you have. Yeah. So this is going to be an important question going forward.
Do you love Nigel's picture? Do you like Nigel's picture? Look at that.
I do. That's a good picture. That's a good. Him and I are very close. We might be twins here. What do you got going on?
Love you, brother. I love Nigel, man. He's a great guy.
Yeah, I like Nigel too. He's a cool guy. I like his little videos when he does these like walks when he was on his vacation. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And by the way, I think it just occurred to me as we were answering that question, maybe what Lily was trying to ask, and I might be wrong, and I apologize if I am. Where do I get these questions so I can have them and not like have to search for them? That was a good and if that's what you meant, either way, even if it's not, it just sparked in me an idea. I'll make sure that I post 7 questions and the answers in
Well, the question was, were they in your book? And the answer is yes. They're spread through. They're spread throughout the book.
I mean, I guess. Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, not necessarily like 1 through 7.
Right. No, it's a more methodical removal of brainwashing mentality way to go. But yeah, but these 7 questions, the way but I'll post them I'll put them there in the info, so you guys can, if you want them, you can just access them right there. Because I mean, they're going to become central to this whole discussion anyway. So, all right. Lily says, "I'm the Lord. I change not." Just kidding. I change all the time. Sorry, Rick. I thought that was funny. You may not, but
I'm just laughing because
I love. I don't know. It made me laugh. I love that. That's funny. All right. Let's see. Yeah, he's Jake Green. He's a little mean. Jake, back off a little bit, man. Be nice to
mean to who?
You. Be nice to my guest, man. It's not necessary. Rick,
I'll go back and read the comments later.
Rick actually knows his Bible way better than you think he does. Trust me on that. We're having a debate between an atheist and a theist. If you want to have a debate between 2 theists, I can pretty much guarantee you he'll tear you up. Anyway, let's see. I don't know if this is a question. It's long, but it's Nigel again, and I trust him. So, my father heard the voice of Baha'u'llah, the founder. Huh?
Baha'i. He's talking Baha'i.
So yeah, the founder of the Baha'i faith, who in effect said, "Follow me," and as a result came alive and had what Christians call a born again experience. Well,
he's bringing that up because of what I said at the very beginning, where I entered the matrix was hearing "Come and follow me." He's saying that his father heard the same thing from the Baha'i.
Well, no, that's triggering for me because is that true? Did that really happen? Or because I mean, maybe the Baha'i God is now the real God? Because if it really happened,
that's what he's saying, which is to negate like what I'm saying. Like if I'm saying, well, I have come and follow me, that's my experience. Well, his father did it from the Baha'i faith too. And see, that's my point, is that I can't argue the fact about that, Nigel. I didn't have your father's experience. I had my own. I don't know what to say. And I'm not going to negate his experience. How could I? What would I do that? I can't.
So this is going to be an interesting journey, Rick. Got to figure out which God is the real God. Or are you comfortable with every God being the real God? Because I don't think your God's okay with that.
I understand. I know what's going on here. I'm very aware.
Weird. Okay. Let's see. Homemaker calling. Also trust her. Let's see. Rick, I'm thankful you're willing to have these talks. I was a full preterist for over 2 years and very recently left Christianity for the reasons Alan is pointing out. So these talks are so necessary. I agree, Lily. These talks are so necessary. And regardless of our completely opposite approaches of our motivations, they are necessary because there's people kind of in this whirlwind, and I think they need to hear from people like Rick and me. Thank you. So I appreciate you watching and supporting this.
That was very nice.
One last question from Eastgate. Why not? Is salvation only for those capable of being in the relationship with God? Were the people killed in the Old Testament capable? Not sure how it relates, but if you want to answer it, you can, Rick. If not, we'll just end the show.
I'm trying to understand the question. Is salvation only for those capable of being in the relationship with God? Were the people?
It's a weird question. I don't understand it.
I don't either.
I think it's almost a structured question from a presupposition that isn't genuinely asking a question. It's weird.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird question.
I mean, how can you be capable of being in a relationship? What does that even mean? Like, if you're not mentally handicapped,
capable of being in the relationship with God. I mean, like if you were to look at it from like a Calvinist perspective, right? Like if you like New Testament, like we talk about Calvinism, you have those that are chosen and those that aren't. So the only way that they would be capable is if they were made alive because of what God said. Were the people killed in the Old Testament capable? So meaning, do they have free will or not, or what? Like I don't know. I don't know how to answer the question.
I'm going to end by saying this, Rick. Jake Green. No, Rick doesn't know the Bible, as he said. Sin, blah blah blah. Who cares about the rest? Jake, listen, man. I appreciate your support. I love you being on and watching, but that's just not productive, man. Saying comments like Rick does know his Bible. He does. I mean, he absolutely does. Do I think he's interpreting it right? No. I think he's seeing things incorrectly. You think he's seeing it incorrectly, but doesn't know the Bible, I just think that's a harsh way of saying it. But I could be being sensitive, so I don't know. Maybe not. Rick's got thick skin, so maybe I shouldn't be defending him, but he is my friend, so for some reason
it's not thick, it's just fluffy. Take it
maybe
easy.
it's fluffy. I don't know, but I don't know. You're my friend, dude, so I just don't like
Yeah, I
hearing
know.
stuff like that.
It's all good. It's all good.
It just bugs me because you are my buddy, so I don't want to hear that. If I say it to you, it's okay, but
yeah, it's totally okay.
Yeah, it's kind of like as brother and sister. You know what I mean? A brother relationship. Yeah, if I say it to you, it's fine. But I don't like when my guests say it to you. I mean, if he knows you, it's fine. I don't know. Maybe I'm off my mark. Anyway, either way, I'll apologize to you and I'll apologize to Jake. Maybe I'm off with you, Jake. Maybe I'm off with you, Rick. Doesn't matter. Let's just all try to be kind to each other. I'll just leave it at that. Let's do the best we can.
Yeah, man.
Positive comments only. Rick, thank you very much. At 5 p.m. today, for those who are watching, if you're looking for an awesome follow-up to this show, the Deconversionists are going to be on. And we are, again, Rick, another thing against you. I'm sorry. We are going to be talking about the problems with preterism. And all four of us came out of preterism. So we are going to absolutely, in my opinion, demolish preterism today at 5 p.m. So that'll be a fun show. Rick, you won't be able to watch it because you'll be busy. All a part of my devious plan.
Actually, no, I can. I can go from 5 to 6. I can
watch
that. Am I allowed to type questions?
Of course, but I was hoping you wouldn't do that. No, I'm just kidding, Ryan. You could.
I actually got in touch with Tristan. I will be talking to Tristan this week.
That's great. Awesome.
Yeah, so thanks for that introduction.
Unfortunately, Tristan can't be there today. Yeah, something come up, so I'm going to be seeking a fourth between now and 5. I'm hoping it'll be Dustin because that dude is absolutely right where we needed to be at this moment, but I'll see what his time looks like today. But anyway, either way, we will still be on with the Deconversionists at 5 p.m. Show up, be there, bring your questions. It's going to be a blast. Problems with preterism. Anyway, Rick, my friend, love you, dude. Thanks for being on.
Love you too, bro.
And next week, we will continue unraveling or uncovering your interpretation of the God of the Matrix, and wherever we go, we go.
You got it, bro.
So, hey, thanks everybody for watching. Love you all. Thanks for being here. Hey, take a minute, take a look in the info, drop some support to make sure we continue to do shows like this. Love you all. Peace.